Amonkhet Red Aggro. Papa Mage makes decks to compete against mine. That way I can work on things to make my deck stronger. He made an Amonkhet Red Aggro deck that some people haven't been talking about. He will show you it right now. Welcome, Young Mage. I'm the Rhino. Young Mage is devoted to reaching and teaching young mages of all ages. Subscribe now to show your support. And don't forget to tap that bell down below to get notifications of all the cool stuff coming soon.
Hey, Papa Mage here, and this is the Amonkhet Red Aggro deck. Now, this is going to obviously get some upgrades as soon as Hour of Devastation comes out, and I've got some ideas already, but not all the cards are available yet, so we'll see. As the deck stands right now, I have one Hope of Ghirapur in the main board, and the nice thing about it is after it does damage, you can sacrifice it, and your opponent can't play non-creature spells. So it basically stops people from stopping your spells. It stops any control sort of thing that might interrupt you in the next turn. So that's a pretty cool trick. Now I have 4 Soul-Scar Mages in there, and the nice thing about him is not only does he have prowess, so every time you cast an instant or a sorcery, he will get the +1/+1. He also will take any non-combat damage and turn it into -1/-1 counters. This is really cool when you're going up against somebody who has much larger creatures. Any of this non-combat damage that we get through turns into -1/-1 counters, so their big creatures become a lot smaller and a lot more manageable. Alright, now I also have 4 Village Messengers because he is just a great human werewolf. A lot of times I bring him out on turn 1, immediately swing with him. Most of the time your opponent doesn't have an answer to him, so he flips and becomes the Moonrise Intruder, and the next turn he is a 2/2 attacking with Menace. So it's a good early game, a little damage real quick, and in some cases most people will just kind of ignore it and then realize later that they should have taken it out sooner. Alright, I also have 3 Ember-Eye Wolves, and the nice thing about him is he comes out as a haste creature. Yeah, he's only a 1/2, but take a look at his secondary ability there. For 1 generic and 1 red, he gets a +2/+0 until end of turn. So later on in the game, he can be huge if you've got a lot of mana out. A great sink for mana to take out really large creatures. Alright, also have 3 Reckless Bushwhackers. Now, this guy you never want to cast for his casting cost. You always want to cast him for his surge cost because of his added ability. Now, when he comes out, he has haste, so he can attack immediately. But if you cast him for the surge cost, then all your other creatures get +1/+0. Now, if you notice, I've got a bunch of haste creatures, and later you'll see I have a bunch of spells as well. So I can cast a Village Messenger, then surge out the Reckless Bushwhacker, and the Village Messenger will get a +1/+0. And the Reckless Bushwhacker can attack as well, so you're swinging in for 4. And there's some other things that I've got to kind of amp some things up. Now, for the late game work, I have things like Hazoret the Fervent. Now, Hazoret really only attacks if you don't have very many cards in your hand. Now, since this is an aggro deck, you are going to go through cards fairly quickly. So it is a really good bet that you're going to run out of cards, and by the time Hazoret comes out, you'll be able to start swinging for 5 each time. Now I also have 1 Glorybringer in the main board. So this is great late in the game. It's kind of the flying, oh great, we have a dragon to deal with. And a lot of times you can when you exert a Glorybringer, it deals 4 damage to a target non-dragon creature, which is not considered combat damage. So if you have a Soul-Scar Mage out, that's 4 -1/-1 counters that's put on something that's bigger. So keep that in mind with the Glorybringer. Of course, he's got flying and haste, and he's a pretty sizable body to deal with. Okay, so only 17 creatures in the main board. I've got more in the sideboard. We'll get to that in a moment. Now, for the spells, there's 21 spells because in a sense this is a lot. It's a burn deck as well. And to spark it off, I've got 2 Burn from Within. Now, a lot of people like this card, but they don't play it right. A lot of times they will use it to just pump in a bunch of damage into a creature and not use another spell with it. So if you take a look at this, if this card deals 1 damage to a target creature that has indestructible, it loses indestructible, and then you can use another spell that costs less, that does more damage, to finish and take out that creature. If you only have this 1 card and you have the mana to pump it in, then go ahead, use it and take out that creature. But the other thing is, this can do damage to a target player. So when you're down late in the game and you top deck this and you've got 6 mana, then you can hit them for 5 and finish the game off. All right, Consuming Fervor. You get people that either really like this card or think that it is absolutely worthless. Now, in a deck like this, where you have aggro creatures, you've got haste creatures, you want them to come out swinging hard and fast, and you don't expect them to last very long. Consuming Fervor is great for this. You cast it on a Village Messenger, and when it flips over to Moonrise Intruder, it still has this on it. So if it's gone down to a +2/+2 on the second turn, and it's Moonrise Intruder, it's still sitting on there. It's still sitting on the creature, and it's kind of a countdown, but you have 4 turns to use it and get the most out of your creature. All right, I also have 4 shock in there because, well, 2 damage to target creature or player. It's kind of a no-brainer. It's only 1 to cast. It works great with all these other cards that we've got. Now, I also have 2 Brute Strength. So we don't have a lot of creatures in here, but when we do attack with them, sometimes we want to have that combat surprise that, oh, by the way, it gets +3/+1 and has trample. So if you have a Consuming Fervor on something and you cast a Reckless Bushwhacker and everything got a +1/+0, and it happened to be an Ember-Eye Wolf, and you could also pump it to get an extra +2, and then throw in this Brute Strength and it gains the trample, that's a pretty big creature coming through with trample really, really quick. So that's why this is in here. And the reason why there's only 2 is because we don't have a lot of creatures. If we sideboard in more creatures, we'll want to sideboard in an extra 1 or 2 Brute Strengths. Okay, 4 copies of Incendiary Flow, because if they have any creatures at all, dealing 3 damage to a target creature or player, this is it. Yes, it's sorcery speed, but if you still have a Soul-Scar Mage out, that can be 3 damage, 3 -1/-1 counters to a 4/4 creature to make it less of a threat to you. The other thing is, if you deal damage and it would die, you exile it, so it's great for taking out those annoying zombies or scrap heap scroungers or any of these things that come back from the graveyard. Anything that has Embalm or Eternalize on it, Incendiary Flow is great for just taking them out of the game completely. Okay, 2 copies of Collective Defiance. Now it has 3 abilities on here and you can escalate them. The first ability I never use with this deck. Just never see a reason to discard cards and draw that many cards again. I suppose if I have a bunch of land and a Collective Defiance, then yeah, that would make sense towards the end of the game. But really, I often use it on turn 4 to deal 4 damage to a creature and 3 damage to an opponent. Remember that Soul-Scar Mage, that 4 damage becomes 4 -1/-1 counters, so you can make big things a lot smaller. Alright, now I also have 4 Insult to Injury in here. Originally, I had this in the sideboard, but I was always sideboarding it in on the second game. So I put it in the main board, and the deck is much happier. So Insult for 3 mana, damage can't be prevented. And you know, some people think that, oh well, that means you can't block. No, you can still block. The damage will still hit the creature, but then all damage is doubled. So even the non-combat damage will double, and it's a great way to really come in with something really huge. And if you get into a long game and you pull out an Insult, and you can throw an Insult and put a brute strength on there, I mean, you're just hitting for so much damage with trample. It's just it's a lot. And the injury portion of this is great late in the game, where you've got your opponent down to 2. You can cast it right out of your graveyard. It deals 2 damage to a target creature and 2 to a target player. Don't forget that you have to damage a creature. You can't cast this and only do 2 damage to a target player. You have to do the creature as well. But most of the time, even you might have a creature out, they might have a creature out, you can still cast it. That's the only downside of this card. There have been times that I have cast Insult, put it into the graveyard, then cast Injury, and then it deals 4 damage to a creature and 4 damage to the player. So that is a cute little trick as well. The land for this is really difficult. 22 mountains. I have been able to play this at 21 mountains. 23 mountains is too many. 22 is kind of it's good. But if you want to run a leaner deck, 21 mountains will be probably fine. But you do need to have the deck run quickly enough so that you can get in your 20 damage by turn 5. Okay, now for the sideboard. I have 3 copies of Bomat Courier. This was originally in the main board, but this is good when you're going out against somebody that's going for a mid to long range game, or maybe somebody who has a control deck, because then you can start piling cards underneath the Bomat Courier, and then later in the game, when you don't have any cards in your hand, or you just have like an extra land or a card that you don't need, or a card that you might want in your graveyard, then you can pay 1 and discard your hand, no cards in hand, sacrifice the courier, and then you get a bunch of cards in your hand. So this is great for those mid, long range games, and when you're going against a control player. Added extra Hope of Ghirapur, because being able to sacrifice it and keep your opponent from countering your spells is just really good. I have an extra Ember-Eye Wolf in here. To tell you the truth, the Ember-Eye Wolf is good, but I'm hoping that something will come out of Hour of Devastation that will be better than the Ember-Eye Wolf to fit that 2-drop slot. I haven't seen anything yet, but I'm still hoping for it. Haven't added Glorybringer in here, just because if you're going against a long game, you might want to have an extra flyer with haste. Extra Burn from Withins. If somebody's playing a bunch of these gods, you burn from within for 1, and then you hit them with a shock or incendiary flow, and that will often take them out completely. And it will exile them at the same time with the Incendiary Flow. All right, the added brute strengths if you need to sideboard in more creatures. And I also have 2 Chandra Torch of Defiance, just because we have 2. Actually, we have 3. 2 seems to work fine in the sideboard. It's great for doing direct damage and doing that big -7. Whenever you cast a spell, it deals 5 damage to a target creature or player. I've played that multiple times, and that's just, it's kind of that fun end of the game win sort of thing. I also have 2 Chandra Flamecallers. She's one of those that as soon as she comes out and you start putting out those 2/3/1 elemental creatures and start attacking with those, the game ends pretty quick. I've rarely, in fact, I don't think I've ever discarded all the cards in my hand and drawn that many cards +1. Most of the time when I have her out, I want to be able to do damage because this is more of an aggro deck. She's also great if your opponent has a bunch of 2/2 zombies out, or those cats or something like that. You can do a -3 or something like that, and blow them all out. So that's really cool with that. Now, one thing that you'll notice is that on our mana curve here, we have a lot of 1-drops and an equal number of 2 and 3 drops, and just a couple of 4 and 5s. The average mana cost is 1.89. So that, I mean, that is the epitome of an aggro deck. For 2 mana, you can cast almost anything in the deck. 3 mana, and you've got what, 90% of the cards that you can cast. So you don't need a lot. You can often start the game with drawing just 1 mountain, especially if you have 22 mountains in your deck. If you go down on the number of mountains, you need to have at least 2 mountains in your opening hand in order to play this well. 3 would be fabulous. But that's pretty much it for the Amonkhet Red Aggro deck. If you have anything that you think should go in here, let me know in the comments below, and we'll come out with an update to this deck once Hour of Devastation's been out for a week or 2, so you can see how it's changed. So till then, I'll talk to you then.
Make sure you click like on each of my videos. It helps out a lot. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. And there are a few things here and here that may interest you. I have more videos coming out soon. And until then, Rhino out.